Hey everybody, Chris the Old Ass Retro Gamer here, and today I'm back with part 2 of this series talking about Mortal Kombat Klones. Last time I talked about my least favorite Mortal Kombat clones, today I'm talking about my favorites. Mortal Kombat 11 is right around the corner, and to celebrate my favorite fighting game franchise of all time, I decided to bring this topic out of mothballs. I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and get it out there for the masses. If anyone actually cares, is the question. So let's just get into it. Here are my 5 favorite Mortal Kombat clones. Get over here! Some of you are gonna laugh at me for picking this game, but you know what? I wouldn't have picked it if I didn't find it enjoyable in some way or another. Street Fighter, the movie, the game. Yes, this is a video game based off of a movie that's based off of a video game. It's Street Fighterception. This actually was an arcade game at first, and the arcade game, I will admit, is pretty awful. Clunky and did not control very well, and was just too fast for its own good. If I remember, it was like playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo on steroids. That's how fast it was. So it was hard to control, it was hard to hit anything, the AI was really tough. So naturally, when the home console port showed up, I was not interested in the slightest. So as an adult, I was like, you know, you should probably try out one of those home console ports. So I picked the Saturn because 2D seems to work best on the Saturn. This is way better than the arcade version. They fixed most of the issues that that version had. And the coolest part of this is, all of the actors who played the characters in the movie reprised their roles in the game. That's pretty fantastic, even though pretty much 90% of them are not martial artists. I have a video game with a digitized Jean-Claude Van Damme in it. That's rad in itself. Digitized graphics, like I said, of the actors, looks pretty good. The controls, still not the greatest, but they are way improved over what was in the arcade. There's locations from the movie, which are recreations of locations from the game, which don't look all that great, I will admit. And the music is kind of cheesy as hell, but I would not have picked this game if it was not, like I said, fun to play. And you know what? It actually is. This was a surprisingly entertaining little cheese ball game that I'm actually happy to have in my collection, even though a lot of people would probably not give it the time of day.
Chris, you're a licensed game whore. Of course you own that.
Well, you know what? I highly recommend you give it a shot because it's not nearly as bad as most people make it out to be. Get over here! Primal Rage. This one was an arcade game that I remember playing a lot when I could not get onto the Mortal Kombat 3 arcade cabinet. I would play this instead. And it came out for pretty much every console out there, and the 3DO, which is the best version of this game on a home console there ever will be. It pretty much looks just like the arcade. I will admit, the controls are not the greatest, which is why this is not higher up my list. To do certain moves and the fatalities in the game require some of the strangest button combinations ever. You had to hold like 3 different buttons down and then do a controller movement in order to get a move to pull off sometimes or a fatality. It was crazy, it was insane, it was convoluted as all hell, but all of the dinosaurs and ape characters that you play as in this game are stop motion claymation, just like in the old Ray Harryhausen movies. And it was a really cool, refreshing graphic choice that I remember is what drew me to the arcade game in the first place, because everyone, like I said, was trying to do that whole digitized actor or completely CGI character fighting game, and this was trying to do something completely different to set itself apart from the rest. And I really appreciated that, I really did. And that's why I picked Primal Rage as my 4th favorite combat clone. Because yes, it is doing what Mortal Kombat did, it has the same modus operandi, it's a fighting game with fatalities and gore and everything, but it just tried to do things a little bit differently, which went a long way in my book. And it's also pretty funny that because you're basically playing as an embodiment of a god back in prehistoric times, you have caveman worshippers at your feet as you're fighting, and you can actually eat them to regain some health. Yes. Get over here! BioF.R.E.A.K.S. Here's another one that's probably going to get me a lot of flack because I know people are going to say, that's not that great. This is more reminiscent of Mortal Kombat 4. No, it is not a 2D game, but I made an exception in this case because I think this game is really, really fun. There's a limited selection of fighters, I will admit that. There are not as many as there are in most other fighting games, but there's just so much cool stuff going on in BioF.R.E.A.K.S. that it really stood out for me on the home consoles. This was not an arcade game at all. This was developed specifically for the home consoles. A lot of the other 3D games that were coming out on the heels of Mortal Kombat 4, like War Gods and Mace the Dark Age and all those, didn't really seem to get it either, but BioF.R.E.A.K.S. was the first one where it felt natural. Plus, the characters are very fun and memorable. The moves that you can do are pretty cool. The gore is pretty abundant, which for a Mortal Kombat fan like me is one of the things you're looking for in these types of games. Moves are easy to pull off, and it's actually really, really fun and kind of involving. And the huge multi-tiered arenas really went a long way, because Mortal Kombat 3 was the only game that was doing that kind of thing at the time, and to see it done in 3D I thought was pretty rad, even though Dead or Alive 2 did it way better down the line. 3D fighting games were not well received when they were first coming out, but you know what? I think BioF.R.E.A.K.S will surprise a lot of you, and if you didn't like it back in the day, give it a shot again. I think it's aged very well as an example of what a good early 3D fighting game should be like. Get over here! Eternal Champions Challenge from the Dark Side. This is essentially the second Eternal Champions game. The first one came out for the Genesis and was actually more of a Street Fighter clone than a Mortal Kombat clone. Trying to do the big characters and the complicated fighting. You even used that stupid activator thing to play it, which never worked. But Eternal Champions kind of took a page from Mortal Kombat and sped the fighting up in the way Mortal Kombat was faster than the Street Fighter games. Added in these really cool fatalities and like hidden characters and all the stuff that was making Mortal Kombat really popular at the time, on a home console game that was original to the Sega CD. And I was not a fan of the original Eternal Champions, like at all. I bought it day one because I loved fighting games, and it was just slow and sluggish, and the controls didn't work all that great, and characters didn't even really grab me all that much. A couple of them were kind of cool, but outside of that, no. I think Midnight was the only one that I liked. All those characters are back in here, but they have a story now, which I think is really cool, told through these crappy-looking cutscenes compared to today's standards. That went a long way to make you invested in the game a little bit more than the original. And plus, the fighting is actually fantastic. All the problems that I had with the Genesis version were fixed in here. Controls were tweaked, the hit detection was better, moves are easy to pull off, fatalities, weird. It has to do with location on the level that you're playing on and stuff like that. Level designs are great, the game is super colorful, the music is absolutely fantastic, and the fatalities are gory and funny. And the thing that I thought was the best aspect of this game was the new characters that they added in were way more interesting than the ones that were in the original. Who doesn't like the Senator? That's the best character in this goddamn game. This is a must-own game for the Sega CD if you are collecting for it. Get over here! And my final pick might be a little predictable if you know me, but it's awesome. That's why I chose it. And that's Killer Instinct. I own Killer Instinct for the Super Nintendo. I don't own the Nintendo 64 version of Killer Instinct Gold, which is a tweaked port of Part 2. I'm using the Xbox One version as my example because this has the original Killer Instinct 1 and 2 arcade games built into it, which is what I wanted to talk about, the original arcade game. When it came to fighting games in the arcade back in the day, if there was one game that gave Mortal Kombat 2 a run for its money, it was the original Killer Instinct. I played that almost as much as Mortal Kombat 2. I absolutely fell in love with the game. I loved the characters, I loved the environments, I loved the story, I loved the music, I loved the combo system. I thought it was super fun, and then like Mortal Kombat 3 tried to copy it and I think failed miserably. It was developed by Rare, which is one of my favorite game development companies of all time, which didn't hurt with me choosing this one as my #1 pick. But the thing about Killer Instinct that I thought set it apart from a lot of the other games out there was Mortal Kombat is not a perfect game, I will admit it. Some of the controls are kind of quirky. Killer Instinct seemed to have had all that worked out. It seemed to have been put through its paces in order to get everything right. I mean, the controls are fantastic. The game is fast, it is also kind of slow. It depends on how you want to play and the characters that you choose. Like I said, I loved all the characters. The ones I used to play as all the time were Jago and Blaze, and sometimes Orchid. And I liked the game so much, I wrote a screenplay for a film version of this just for shits and giggles. It wasn't any good, but I tried. The Super Nintendo version is good. It is limited, but you know, you can do these massive combos that you could in the arcade. It's a little harder to pull off with a control pad compared to an arcade stick and having the 6 buttons on the side. But now that I have a way to play the actual arcade version at home, yeah, that brought back so many memories, booting that up for the first time, and just like, I was instantly transported back to just for fun, and just standing there slack-jawed looking at these amazing computer-generated characters that looked really, really interesting. Yeah, they looked like plastic a little bit, but I didn't care. It was something new and different, and I ate it up. It is still one of my favorite fighting games of all time, and I tell everybody, if I had the means to buy arcade games, the two that I would buy are a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet and a Killer Instinct cabinet, hands down. So there you have it, my 5 favorite Mortal Kombat clones. I'm sure you saw a couple of them coming, like Killer Instinct. You know, I talked about how much I liked that game in a couple of videos, especially one with Radical Reggie. Why don't you tell me what your favorite Mortal Kombat clones are? Leave your list in the comments below, or make a response video as well. Either one will do. I'd be happy just to find out what your picks are. I'm sure I could also do many other Mortal Kombat themed videos in the future. I might do another one about characters that I want to see added into Mortal Kombat 11, just as I did with Mortal Kombat 10. But until then, I'm Chris, the old ass retro gamer, signing off.